My mom tricked me into a family meeting. When I arrived, lawyers were already there, ready to force me to sign everything over. When I refused to hand over the inheritance, they threatened me. I just smiled and looked around the table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You are a lot of people, I said. Then I added calmly, funny thing is, I only brought one person too. My name is Jasmine, and I am 32 years old. I work as a forensic accountant, which means I spend my days tracking down hidden assets and exposing financial lies. But nothing prepared me for the lie sitting at table 4 of the most expensive steakhouse in the city. I thought I was coming to meet my mom Bernice for a birthday dinner. Instead, I walked into an ambush. My mother was there in her Sunday best, the hat with the wide brim that she wore when she wanted to play the role of the saintly matriarch. Next to her was Calvin, my stepfather, a man who had not worked a real job in 6 years, but always had a new investment scheme involving crypto or flipping condos that did not exist. Then there was my half-sister Brianna looking like a porcelain doll and clutching the hand of her fiancé Tyler. Tyler was the golden ticket. He was white. He came from what my mother called a good family, and he had the kind of smile that politicians practice in the mirror. And at the end of the table sat a man I did not know. A man in a suit that cost more than my first car holding a briefcase that looked like it contained a bomb. Please sit down, Jasmine, my mother said. Her voice was not warm. It was the voice she used when she was trying to sell raffle tickets at church. We need to discuss the future. I did not sit. I stood behind the empty chair and looked at the leather folio the lawyer slid across the polished wood table toward me. The title at the top read, Voluntary Asset Reallocation Agreement. I did not need to read the fine print to know what it said, but I picked it up anyway. My eyes scanned the numbers. They wanted 70%. They wanted me to voluntarily transfer 70% of the estate my father Otis left me into a family trust controlled by Bernice and Calvin. As I read the legal jargon, the smell of expensive steak and red wine faded, and suddenly I was back in the cab of my father's 18-wheeler. I could smell the diesel and the stale coffee. My dad Otis drove trucks for 40 years. He missed birthdays. He missed school plays. He ate bologna sandwiches wrapped in foil while driving through snowstorms so he would not have to spend money at diners. He wore the same work boots until the soles fell off because he was saving every single penny for me. He used to tell me, Jasmine, I am not working this hard, so you can buy fancy things. I am working this hard, so you never have to say yes to someone just because you need their money. I looked up from the paper. My father died 6 months ago. He left everything to me because he knew exactly who these people were. He knew Bernice would spend it on appearances. He knew Calvin would gamble it away. And now here they were trying to steal the sweat off a dead man's back. This is a joke, right? I asked, dropping the paper back onto the table. Bernice sighed dramatically. Jasmine, do not be difficult. Tyler and Brianna are starting their life together. Tyler comes from a very prestigious background. We cannot let Brianna enter that marriage with nothing. It is about dignity. Your father would want the whole family to share the blessing. I looked at Tyler. He was inspecting his fingernails, avoiding my gaze. Dignity. That was rich. My mother wanted to use my father's hard-earned money to buy her way into Tyler's country club world. She wanted to present Brianna as an heiress, instead of the daughter of a woman who was currently 3 months behind on her HOA fees. I tapped the document with my manicured nail. I see a few problems here. First of all, the valuation of Dad's trucking fleet is off by about $200,000. Second, you have listed Calvin as the trustee. Calvin, who is currently being sued by 3 different contractors for unpaid invoices. Calvin slammed his hand on the table, causing the silverware to rattle. You watch your mouth, girl. I am an entrepreneur. You do not understand how business works. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. I am a forensic accountant, Calvin. Understanding how business works is literally my job. I know you are leveraged to the hilt on Ethereum, and you took out a second mortgage on Mom's house without telling her. Is that why we are here? To pay off your bad bets before the bank takes the roof over your heads? Bernice stood up, her face flushing a deep angry red. "You selfish, ungrateful child. After everything I did for you, raising you, feeding you, you are going to let your sister suffer. You are going to embarrass us in front of Tyler's family. You are holding on to that money out of spite. It is sinful, Jasmine." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Jasmine, if you do not sign this voluntary agreement, we will be forced to contest the will in court. We will argue that Otis was not of sound mind when he signed the final amendment. We will tie up these assets for years. By the time you see a dime, the legal fees will have eaten half of it. It is better to share now than lose later." It was a classic shakedown. They were banking on my fear. They thought I was the quiet girl who used to do her homework in the corner while Brianna got dance lessons and new dresses. They thought they had me surrounded. 5 against 1. That was when I smiled. The smile that made Tyler finally look up from his hands with a flicker of worry in his eyes. "You brought a lawyer," I said softly. "That was smart. But you brought a lawyer who chases ambulances and writes threatening letters. I brought someone else." I turned toward the restaurant entrance and nodded. The heavy oak doors swung open. A woman walked in. She was not young. Her hair was silver and pulled back in a tight bun. She walked with a cane, but she moved with the kind of authority that makes entire courtrooms fall silent. She was wearing a simple black suit. Bernice gasped. She recognized her. Everyone in the city recognized her. "Hello, Bernice," the woman said, her voice like gravel and iron. It was Judge Davis. Retired Superior Court Judge Davis. And more importantly, my father's oldest friend. She was the one who helped him set up his estate planning. She was the executor he chose specifically because he knew this moment would come. Bernice sat down hard as if her legs had given out. Judge Davis walked to the table and did not sit. She simply placed a single sheet of heavy cream-colored paper on top of the stack of lies the other lawyer had brought. "This is a copy of the final will and testament of Otis Jackson," Judge Davis said. Clause 14, Section B, the No Contest Clause. It states clearly that any beneficiary who attempts to challenge the validity of this will or demands a redistribution of assets shall immediately forfeit any and all gifts bequeathed to them. She looked at Brianna. "That means the $5,000 Otis left you for a honeymoon is gone if you proceed." She looked at Bernice. "That means the house which Otis graciously allowed you to keep living in despite the divorce is gone if you proceed. The deed reverts to the estate immediately upon any legal challenge." The table went deadly silent. The ambulance chaser lawyer closed his briefcase quietly, trying to make himself invisible. I leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the table. "My father knew you, Bernice. He knew you, Calvin. He knew you would try to pick his bones clean. So he built a wall you cannot climb. You want to sue me? Go ahead. Oh. You will lose the house. You will lose the cash gifts. You will lose everything." I picked up my purse and looked at Tyler. He was pale now, his dreams of a rich wife melting away under the heat of the truth. "And you, Tyler?" I said, my voice cheerful and bright. "I did a little digging on your prestigious family. Strange thing. For a family with so much money, your credit score is remarkably low. If you are marrying my sister for a payday, you might want to check the balance first. She is broke. And as of tonight, so is her mother." I turned to walk away. Bernice was opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water, but no sound was coming out. "Enjoy the dinner," I called back over my shoulder. "I hope you can pay for it, because I am certainly not picking up the check." I walked out into the cool night air. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. They thought they had trapped a victim. Instead, they had walked right into the lion's den. But as I got into my car, I knew this was not over. Bernice was desperate, and desperation makes people dangerous. This was just the opening shot. And I was ready for war. I drove home in silence, but my phone was already lighting up the passenger seat like a disco ball. It was not texts. It was notifications. Bernice had gone nuclear. She did not scream at me directly. She did something far worse. She went to Facebook. I pulled into my driveway and opened the app. There it was. A picture of her crying, holding a Bible with a caption that made my stomach turn. Please pray for my daughter Jasmine. She has been blinded by greed and refuses to help her sick sister and the family that raised her. The devil has taken hold of her heart. Sick sister. Brianna ran a half marathon last week. But to the church ladies, she was now a fragile victim. My phone rang. It was Aunt Verna. I picked up. Jasmine, how could you? Verna hissed. That boy Tyler is the best thing to happen to this family. He is going to lift us all up. You are going to ruin the only chance Brianna has at a good life because you want to hoard your daddy as money. I hung up. I sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel. I could hear my dad's voice in my head. It was the last thing he said to me in the hospice bed, his hand rough and calloused in mine. Jasmine, do not let them eat you. They see me as a paycheck, and they will see you as a bank. I left that money to you because you are the only one who knows what it costs to earn it. Do not let them eat you. I wiped a single tear from my cheek. Bernice wanted a war of public opinion. She wanted to shame me into submission. But she forgot one thing. Shame only works if you think you have done something wrong. And I had not. Instead of blocking them, I went to work. I made a pot of strong black coffee and sat down in front of my 3-monitor setup. I am a forensic accountant. I find money that people try to hide, and I find the debts that people try to ignore. Something about this whole setup smelled wrong. If Tyler was so wealthy, if his family was American royalty, why did he need my father as trucking money to start a life? Rich people do not beg for their in-laws' inheritance. They write checks. I cracked my knuckles and started typing. I skipped the social media fluff and went straight to the public records. The county clerk office, the state tax liens, the bankruptcy court filings. It took me less than 20 minutes to find the truth. Tyler was not a millionaire. He was a sinking ship. His name popped up on 3 different dissolved LLCs in the last 5 years. There was a federal tax lien against him for $40,000. And his prestigious family home. It was in foreclosure. I sat back in my chair and laughed. It was a dry, humorless laugh. My mother was not just greedy, she was being played. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she knew Tyler was a fraud, and she was trying to use my money to patch up the holes in his boat just so she could have a white son-in-law and a country club membership. They were trying to rob me to pay off a con man. The phone rang again at 2 a.m. The screen glowed in the darkness of my bedroom. Mom. I knew I should not answer, but I needed to know how far she would go. I swiped accept and put it on speaker. I did not say hello. I know you are there, Jasmine, Bernice said. Her voice was different. The sweet church lady act was gone. It was low and jagged like broken glass. You think you are so smart with your fancy job and your dad is money. But I know things. I know Otis kept a second set of books for that trucking company. He cheated the government, Jasmine. And if you do not sign that transfer agreement by noon tomorrow, I am going to call the IRS and report his estate for tax fraud. They will freeze everything. You will be tied up in audits for a decade. My blood ran cold. She was willing to destroy her dead husband's reputation just to get a payout. She was willing to burn his legacy to the ground. I reached over and tapped the record button on my other phone. I let the silence hang for a moment. Are you finished, Bernice? I asked calmly. Go ahead and call them. Call the IRS. But you seem to forget what I do for a living. I audited Dad's books myself 3 years ago. Every dime is accounted for. He was clean. I paused and let my voice drop an octave so she could hear the steel in it. But while I was digging, I took a look at Calvin's crypto investments and his real estate flips. You might want to ask your husband why he has 7 undeclared offshore accounts before you start dialing the tax man. Because if the IRS comes looking at this family, they are not going to arrest my dead father. They are going to put your living husband in handcuffs. The line went dead. The silence lasted exactly 6 days. On the morning of the 7th day, my phone buzzed against the marble countertop of my kitchen island. It was not a text message or a call. It was a high-priority security alert from my primary brokerage firm. Someone was attempting to reset the password to my investment portfolio. I picked up the phone and watched the notifications scroll across the screen. The intruder was bypassing the two-factor authentication by answering the security questions. Question 1. What was the name of your first pet? I stared at the screen and felt a cold smile touch my lips. I was 6 years old when I got a hamster named Mr. Whiskers. He lived for 3 months before he died, and my mother flushed him down the toilet while I cried in the hallway. Only one person in the world knew that name. Only one person knew the answer to the second question about the street I lived on in 2nd grade. Bernice. A normal person would have panicked. A normal person would have clicked the panic button, called the bank, and locked down the account. But I am not a normal person. I am a forensic accountant. I hunt financial predators for a living, and when you catch a predator trying to pick the lock, you do not scare them away. You open the door and let them walk into a cage. I opened my laptop and logged into the back end of my security interface. I initiated a protocol we call a honeypot. It is a trap designed to look like a system vulnerability. Instead of blocking the intrusion, I allowed it. I rerouted their IP address away from my actual portfolio, which held the life insurance payout and the trucking company dividends. Instead, I directed them to a dummy sandbox account I use for testing. To the untrained eye, it looked exactly like my real dashboard. But inside, there were no millions. There was only a checking account with a balance of $500 and a single encrypted PDF file sitting on the desktop labeled Otis Bitcoin Wallet Keys. It was the digital equivalent of leaving a piece of cheese in a mousetrap. Then I did the second thing they did not expect. I opened the app for the home security system at my mother's house. 3 years ago, when Calvin was traveling for one of his phantom business trips, I installed a high-definition Ring camera in their living room so Mom would feel safe. I paid for the hardware, I paid for the subscription, and I still held the administrative password. They never asked me to remove it, because knowing them, they had completely forgotten it existed. The feed loaded in crisp color, and there they were, the unholy trinity. They were gathered around the dining room table, huddled over a laptop like witches around a cauldron. The morning sun was streaming in through the windows, illuminating their crime. Bernice was pacing back and forth, gripping a glass of wine, even though it was 10 in the morning. Calvin was leaning over the back of the chair, pointing at the screen with a greedy intensity. And sitting in the chair, typing furiously, was Tyler. I turned up the volume on my phone. The audio was tinny but clear. "I am in," Tyler said. His voice was smug. "I told you I could bypass the firewall if we had the recovery answers. You were right, Bernice. Mr. Whiskers was the key." I watched my mother clap her hands together. It was a grotesque display of joy. "Get to the assets, Tyler," she hissed. "Find the money. Where is the trucking money?" "It is not here," Tyler muttered, clicking around. "Wait. There is a file. Bitcoin keys. Otis must have converted the cash to crypto to hide it." I sat back in my kitchen sipping my coffee and watching them celebrate their felony. They thought they had broken into the vault. They had no idea they had just broken into a prison cell and locked the door from the inside. They were downloading the file, and the moment they opened it, I would have everything I needed. I watched the cursor on the screen move toward the file icon. Tyler did not hesitate. He clicked download with the confidence of a man who thought he owned the world. On his screen, a progress bar appeared, promising him millions in untraceable cryptocurrency. On my screen, a different kind of progress bar appeared. It was the tracking beacon embedding itself into his hard drive. He thought he was opening a treasure chest, but he was actually putting on a digital ankle monitor. Seeing his face illuminated by the blue light of the laptop brought back the memory of the first time Brianna brought him home. It was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. He walked in like he was doing us a favor just by existing. He sat at the head of the table, where my father used to sit, and he did not even ask if it was okay. He spent 3 hours lecturing me about leverage and hedge funds and market volatility. He used words like equity and liquidity, as if they were weapons to keep us in our place, to remind us that we were working class and he was elite. He drank the expensive scotch my dad had been saving for a special occasion, and he poured it like it was water. And when the bill came for the catering that night, he suddenly realized he had left his wallet in the car. He let my mom pay. He let the widow he was supposedly impressing cover his tab. I knew then exactly what he was. He was not a businessman. He was a parasite in a tailored suit. He talked about millions, but he never paid for a single dinner. The download finished. Tyler clicked open. He frowned. The file appeared to be corrupted. It was just a blank page. "What is this?" he muttered, tapping the keys aggressively. "It is empty. There is nothing here." "Oh, but there was something there, Tyler." Within seconds, my dashboard flooded with data. I had his IP address. I had the device ID of his laptop. I had the exact GPS coordinates of the crime scene, which happened to be my mother's dining room table. The man who claimed to have a portfolio worth millions was currently committing a federal cybercrime to steal what he thought was a fortune from his sister-in-law. I sat back and took a sip of my cold coffee. The anger I had felt for months was gone, replaced by the cold, hard satisfaction of justice. I did not just have a suspicion anymore. I had a smoking gun. And unlike him, I knew exactly how to use it. I did not confront them immediately. I did not storm into the house and scream about the hacking. That would have been messy, and it would have given Tyler time to run. I needed them all in one place. I needed them comfortable and arrogant and feeling like they had already won. I opened my email client and started typing. The subject line was simple: surrender. I kept the body of the message short and pathetic because that is what they wanted to hear. I wrote, "Mom, you win. I am tired of the fighting and the threats. I know you are struggling, and I cannot watch this family fall apart. Meet me at Judge Davis' office tomorrow at 9 in the morning. I will bring the checkbook." I paused before adding the final hook. I typed, "Please bring Tyler and Brianna too. Since the trust fund involves future generations, I want them to witness the transfer." I hit send. I leaned back in my chair and watched the message vanish into the server. I knew exactly what was happening on the other end. Bernice was probably screaming with joy. Tyler was probably calculating how fast he could spend the money. They thought I had broken under the pressure. They thought they had bullied me into submission. They had no idea that I was not inviting them to a victory party. I was inviting them to an execution. The conference room in Judge Davis' office was lined with mahogany shelves and smelled of old paper and justice. I sat at the head of the long table, my hands folded calmly on top of a closed black file folder. The clock on the wall ticked to 9:00 exactly, and the heavy double doors swung open. They did not walk in. They paraded in. Bernice led the charge. She was wearing a white suit that looked suspiciously like a wedding outfit, and a hat so large it defied gravity. She was beaming with the kind of radiant toxic joy that only comes from thinking you have crushed your enemy. Calvin followed close behind, wearing a tie so bright yellow it hurt my eyes, and smelling of cheap cologne and greed. Brianna drifted in, looking bored, scrolling on her phone, but I noticed the new designer bag on her arm. And bringing up the rear was Tyler. He walked with a bounce in his step, the strut of a man who thinks he has just pulled off the heist of the century. Bernice rushed over to the table. She did not hug me. She reached out and patted my shoulder with a stiff, condescending hand. "Oh, praise the Lord, Jasmine," she said, her voice loud enough for the secretary outside to hear. "I knew you would finally see the light. I prayed all night for your heart to soften. God has finally answered our prayers and brought you back to the flock." She pulled out a chair and sat down, her eyes immediately locking onto the folder under my hands. She was not praising God. She was praising the check she thought was inside that folder. Then Tyler spoke up. He pulled out a chair for Brianna and then sat down directly across from me. He unbuttoned his suit jacket and leaned back, spreading his arms as if he already owned the building. He gave me a sympathetic smile, the kind you give to a slow child. "You made the right call, Jasmine," he said, his voice smooth like oil on pavement. "I know this was hard for you, but family is the most important asset we have. You were overwhelmed. It happens. But do not worry. I will personally oversee the transition of the funds into the trust. I have a lot of experience managing high-value portfolios. Brianna and I will make sure the money grows. You won't have to worry about a thing." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had installed a keylogger on my computer less than 24 hours ago. The man who had 3 failed companies and a federal tax lien. He was sitting there lecturing me about financial responsibility. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to laugh in his face. He actually thought he was the hero of this story. He thought he was the benevolent savior rescuing the family fortune from the bitter spinster sister. "I am sure you will." "Tyler," I said, my voice flat and emotionless, "you seem to be very good at finding money where it does not belong." "Exactly," he said, missing the insult completely. "We are all just glad you decided to do the right thing. Now, shall we get the paperwork started? We have a wedding to plan." Bernice nodded eagerly. "Yes, the check, Jasmine. Did you bring the check?" I smiled. It was the sharpest smile I had ever worn. "I did not bring a check, Bernice, but I did bring something else for Tyler." I reached into my large leather tote bag. Bernice leaned forward, her eyes wide and hungry, expecting to see a checkbook or a stack of cashier checks. Tyler was already unbuttoning his suit jacket, preparing to shake hands on the deal of a lifetime. Instead, I pulled out my iPad Pro. I set it down gently in the center of the mahogany table. The sound of the metal casing hitting the wood was the only noise in the room. I spun the device around so the screen faced them. "What is this?" Bernice asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Is this the transfer document?" "No, Mother," I said. "This is a movie." I tapped the screen. The video player opened, and I hit play. It was the footage from the Ring camera in their dining room, recorded less than 24 hours ago. The audio was crisp and clear, amplified by the conference room acoustics. Everyone at the table heard the click-clack of keyboard keys. Everyone heard Tyler's voice bragging about bypassing the security questions. Everyone heard Bernice cheering him on, urging him to find the Bitcoin wallet. On the screen, the digital version of Tyler was laughing. In the room, the real Tyler went deathly pale. The smug smile slid off his face like slush on a windshield. Bernice covered her mouth with her hand. Calvin looked at the door, realizing too late that there was no exit strategy. "You hacked us!" Tyler shouted, jumping to his feet. "That is illegal! You were spying on us!" I did not flinch. I swiped left on the screen. The video disappeared and was replaced by a dense document full of numbers and red text. "Actually, Tyler, you hacked me," I said, my voice cool and steady. "I just recorded the burglary. But since we are talking about illegal activities, let's talk about this." I pointed to the document on the screen. Brianna squinted at it. It was a comprehensive credit report. But it was not the one Tyler had shown the family. This was the real one, pulled from the deep web databases that forensic accountants use to find the truth. "This is your fiancé financial soul, Brianna," I said, looking directly at my sister. "Look at the score. 420, that is not just bad, that is catastrophic." I scrolled down on the iPad. "See this line here? That is a federal tax lien from the IRS for $200,000. See this judgment here? That is from a casino in Las Vegas for unpaid markers totaling $50,000. And these 3 LLCs that he claims are successful startups. They are all dissolved. They have 0 assets and massive liabilities." Brianna looked from the screen to Tyler. Her eyes were filling with tears, but also with a dawning horror. "Tyler," she whispered, "you said you had a trust fund. You said you were waiting for your inheritance to clear." I stood up and leaned over the table. "Guy, listen to me. There is no trust fund. There is no inheritance." I looked at Tyler, who was now sweating profusely. "He is not marrying you because he loves you, Brianna. He is marrying you because Mom told him that Dad left $2 million in liquid cash. He does not want a wife. He wants a bailout. He is drowning in debt to some very dangerous people. And he thought our family was his winning lottery ticket." The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Brianna stood up slowly. She looked at the man she was supposed to marry in a month. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Were you just using me to pay your gambling debts?" Tyler looked around the room. He saw the judgment in my eyes. He saw the fear in Bernice's eyes. And he snapped. The polished gentleman mask fell away completely, revealing the desperate cornered rat underneath. "Shut up," he screamed at me. "You jealous, bitter witch! You ruined everything!" He lunged across the table, reaching for the iPad, trying to destroy the evidence. His hand was inches from the screen when a loud crack echoed through the room like a gunshot. "Sit down, boy." It was Judge Davis. She had slammed her heavy metal pen onto the table. She did not yell, but her voice carried the weight of 30 years on the bench. It was a command that stopped Tyler in midair. "Do not make this worse for yourself, son," she said calmly. "You just confessed to federal wire fraud on camera and attempted grand larceny. And now you want to add assault to the list." Tyler froze. He looked at the door. "I would not run if I were you," Judge Davis continued, closing her file. "We called the authorities 10 minutes ago. There are 2 sheriff deputies standing in the hallway right now waiting for my signal. So I suggest you sit down, shut your mouth, and wait for the handcuffs." Bernice did not look at the police officers waiting in the hallway. She looked at me with eyes full of pure, unadulterated hatred. Even with the evidence staring her in the face, even with Tyler looking like a cornered animal, she refused to believe it. In her mind, she was the matriarch of a prestigious family, and I was just the jealous daughter trying to tear down her castle. "You are a liar," Bernice shrieked, her voice cracking. "You forged those documents, Jasmine. You always were a liar. Tyler is a good man. He is a God-fearing man. You just want to ruin Brianna's happiness because you are miserable and alone. You created this whole charade to humiliate us." She turned to Tyler, grabbing his arm with desperate claws. "Tell her, Tyler. Tell her she is lying. Tell her about the trust fund. Tell her about your family estate." Tyler did not answer. He could not answer because he was too busy watching the door, wondering if he could outrun a sheriff deputy. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me, and I realized I did not hate her anymore. I just pitied her. She was so desperate for status that she would let a wolf into the henhouse just so she could wear a fur coat. "I have one last thing to show you," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through her screaming. "You say Tyler is a good man. You say I am the villain. Well, let us see what you really think of me when you think no one is listening." I tapped the file labeled Audio Evidence Number 1. It was a recording from 3 weeks ago. It was captured by the same security system in their living room. The quality was perfect. Bernice's voice filled the room. It was not her church voice. It was her plotting voice. "Do not worry about the debt, Tyler," the recording said. "We will get the money from Jasmine. She is soft. She is stupid. She thinks she is smart because she has that degree, but she does not understand the real world. We just need to pressure her about family duty. Once she signs over the trucking assets, you can take what you need to pay off your loans, and we will keep the rest. Jasmine will never know. She is too busy working to notice." The recording ended. The silence in the room was heavier than a grave. Bernice's face went gray. She released Tyler's arm as if it were burning hot. She looked at Brianna, but Brianna was not looking at her. Brianna was staring at the table, her whole body shaking. "You called me stupid, Mom," I said, standing tall. "You called me soft. But I am the only one in this room who is not going to jail today, and I am the only one who is walking out of here with my bank account intact." Brianna turned slowly toward Tyler. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "You and Mom," she whispered. "You were laughing at us. You were laughing at Jasmine." Tyler opened his mouth to make an excuse, but he never got the chance. Brianna's hand moved faster than I had ever seen. She slapped him. It was a sound like a thunderclap. It was the sound of a fantasy shattering into a million pieces. Tyler's head snapped back, and a red handprint instantly bloomed on his pale cheek. In the chaos, Calvin saw his opening. He tried to slide along the wall toward the exit, thinking he could slip away while everyone was distracted. He made it 3 steps before a large uniformed security guard stepped in front of him, blocking the door like a mountain. Calvin stopped his shoulders, slumping in defeat. And Bernice, the great Bernice, the woman who cared more about appearances than her own flesh and blood. She did not scream anymore. She did not fight. She simply collapsed back into her chair. Her large hat tipped sideways, making her look ridiculous and small. She stared at the polished mahogany table, unable to meet my eyes, unable to meet Brianna's eyes. The facade was gone. The money was gone. And for the first time in her life, she was completely and utterly alone. The deputies did not need to use force. Tyler crumbled the moment the handcuffs touched his wrists. As they read him his rights, we learned the cherry on top of this sundae of lies. Tyler was not just broke. He was currently serving 5 years of probation for check-kiting in another state. By trying to hack my account across state lines, he had committed a federal felony and violated his probation simultaneously. He was not going to a country club. He was going to a federal penitentiary. As they dragged him out, crying and begging Brianna to call his father, I turned my attention to the 2 people left in the room who thought they might still escape. Bernice and Calvin sat frozen in their chairs. Judge Davis reached into her briefcase and pulled out 2 thick envelopes. She slid one to Bernice and one to Calvin. "These are civil lawsuits," Judge Davis said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "We are suing you for conspiracy to commit identity theft, invasion of privacy, and unauthorized access to a protected computer system. And since you used your home internet connection to commit the crime, we have grounds to seize your electronic assets for forensic analysis." Bernice looked at the papers and then up at me. Her eyes were wide with panic. "You are suing your own mother," she whispered. "You would send me to prison. Imagine what the church would say." I leaned forward. "That is the only thing you care about, isn't it, Bernice? The church, the neighbors, the appearance of being a good Christian woman. Well, I have a deal for you." I pulled a single sheet of paper from my file. "I will drop the lawsuit. I will not press criminal charges. I will let you walk out of here without handcuffs so you can keep your reputation intact. But there is a price." Bernice nodded eagerly. "Anything, Jasmine. We are family." "You are going to sign this document," I said, pointing to the paper. "It is a full and permanent waiver of any claim to Dad's estate. You get nothing. Not a dime. Not a truck. Not a single share of stock. And secondly, you are going to list the house for sale immediately. You will use the proceeds to pay off Calvin his gambling debts, so he does not drag you down with him. And finally, once you sign this, you lose my number. You do not call me on Christmas. You do not email me. You do not tag me on Facebook. As far as you are concerned, I do not exist." Calvin tried to protest, but Bernice silenced him with a look. She knew she was beaten. She knew I had the evidence to put her in an orange jumpsuit, and that terrified her more than poverty. With a shaking hand, she picked up the pen. She did not look at me as she signed away her claim to the fortune she tried to steal. She signed away her house, and she signed away her daughter. It was the most expensive signature of her life, but it was the cheapest price I could pay for my freedom. Bernice and Calvin were still processing their defeat when Brianna walked over to me. She looked like a different person than the girl who had walked in here an hour ago. Her designer makeup was ruined, and her posture was slumped. She looked young and scared. She stood in front of me, wringing her hands, the fake diamond ring Tyler gave her, now looking like a piece of cheap glass. "I am so sorry, Jasmine," she sobbed. "I did not know. I swear I did not know. Mom told me you were trying to steal from us. She told me Tyler was going to save us. I was just so stupid." She waited for me to hug her. She waited for the big sister embrace that fixes everything. But I did not reach out. I could not. Because for years she had watched Mom treat me like a servant and she had never said a word. She had enjoyed the benefits of being the golden child. Innocence is not an excuse when you are 24 years old. Instead of a hug, I reached into my bag and pulled out my checkbook. I wrote a check for $5,000. It was not a lot of money to some people, but to me it represented the difference between enabling her and empowering her. It was enough to rent a small studio apartment for 3 months and pay for the enrollment fees at the local community college. I ripped it out and held it out to her. "Take this," I said. Brianna looked at it confused. "Is this from the trust?" she asked. "No," I said firmly. "This is from my paycheck. This is money I earned working late nights and weekends. Dad's money is staying locked up until you learn how to respect it. This is for you to start over. Get a job. Get an apartment. Go to school. Learn how to pay your own bills so you never have to depend on a man like Tyler or a liar like Mom again." She took the check, her hands shaking. I looked her dead in the eye. "Stand on your own 2 feet, Brianna. Do not be like Mom. That is the only inheritance that matters." I walked out of the heavy oak doors of the law firm and took a deep breath. The air smelled like rain and city traffic, but to me it smelled like oxygen. I walked past the parking spot where Bernice was sitting in her car sobbing into her hands, while Calvin yelled into his phone. I did not stop. I did not look back. I kept walking until I reached my car. It was not a flashy sports car like the one Tyler had rented to impress us. It was a brand new SUV, solid and safe and paid for in cash. My cash. I drove 40 minutes out of the city to the quiet hillside where we buried my father 6 months ago. The grass was green and cut short just the way he liked it. I knelt down in front of the simple granite headstone that read, "Otis Jackson, beloved father and honest man." I reached into my bag one last time. I did not pull out flowers. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was the final audit report of the estate. The liabilities column, where Bernice and Calvin and Tyler had tried to burrow like ticks, was completely empty. The assets were secure. The legacy was safe. I placed the paper on the cold stone and weighed it down with a small rock so the wind would not take it. "Here you go, Dad," I whispered. "The books are balanced, just like you taught me." I stood up and looked out over the skyline. For years I thought I was the weak one because I did not fight for attention at the dinner table. I thought I was the invisible daughter. But standing there with the wind in my hair, I realized I was the only one who was truly seen. Bernice saw a bank account. Brianna saw a safety net. But Otis saw a fighter. He knew I was the only one strong enough to hold the line. My mother taught me that money is a mask you wear to hide who you really are. She taught me that money is image and status and the envy of your neighbors. But my father taught me the truth. He taught me that money is not for showing off. It is for saying no. It is for the power to stand in a room full of liars and tell the truth without fear. My mother taught me that money is face. My father taught me that money is freedom. Today I use that freedom to buy back my own life. And the price I had to pay. Just a few relatives who were never worthy of the name family. This story teaches us that true inheritance isn't just about assets. It is about integrity and the courage to set boundaries. We often mistake enabling toxic behavior for familial duty, but Jasmine proves that shared DNA does not entitle anyone to your hard-earned future. Her father left her financial freedom not to buy status, but to buy the power to say no. When family becomes a predator, protecting your peace is the highest form of self-respect. You are not selfish for guarding what is yours. You are simply breaking the cycle of abuse to build a life defined by your own terms. If you believe respect must be earned and not just inherited, hit that subscribe button and share your story in the comments below.